On July 7th of this year, in a conference room in Hong Kong, a small group of banks completed a handful of quiet gold transactions that almost nobody outside the industry noticed. No press conference drama, no viral headline, just settlements moving through a brand new system for the very first time. Here's why I think you should care anyway. 4 of the banks that made those first trades happen are the exact same banks that run London's gold clearing system, the one that's effectively set the reference price for gold worldwide for more than a century. One of them formally joined London's clearing group the day before this new system launched. The institutions that built the old system are now, with their own hands, helping build what could become its rival. I want to walk you through exactly what launched, why it matters more than the quiet way it arrived suggests, and, just as importantly, what it doesn't mean yet, because I think you deserve the honest version of this story, not the dramatic one. If you're enjoying the content and finding it useful, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It's completely free and helps support the channel more than you might think. Section 1. How London got this job in the first place. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what actually happens when gold gets traded, because it's not what most people picture. Almost none of the gold that changes hands in global markets physically moves. Instead, participants hold what's called an unallocated account, essentially a claim on a shared pool of gold, not a specific numbered bar in a specific vault. When a trade settles, a clearing system simply updates the ledger. No armored trucks, no vault transfers, just an entry adjusted on a screen. That low-friction model, built on deep institutional trust accumulated over generations, is exactly what made London the dominant global center for gold trading and pricing, going back to 1919, when the city's twice-daily reference price first became the benchmark the rest of the world's contracts and reserves were built around. That system has worked, largely unchallenged, for more than 100 years. Whoever sets that reference price holds a quiet but genuine form of influence over the entire global gold market. And until this year, that influence sat almost entirely in London, even though Asia has long been the world's largest region for physical gold demand, led by China and India. Section 2. What actually launched on July 7th. Now let's get into exactly what happened, because the details here are genuinely well documented, not speculative. On July 7th, 2026, Hong Kong began trial operations of a new government-owned gold clearing and settlement system run by an entity called the Hong Kong Precious Metals Central Clearing Company, the PMCC for short. Hong Kong's chief executive announced that initial gold deposits and the first transaction settlements had already been completed, involving multiple banks and their clients, including mining companies, refiners, jewelers, and institutional investors. 3 banks, HSBC, ICBC Asia, and Bank of China Hong Kong, were the first participants to complete two-way transfers through what's being called Delivery Connect, a direct link to mainland China's gold market. This didn't come out of nowhere. Back in January of this year, Hong Kong signed a formal cooperation agreement with the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the world's largest physical gold exchange by trading volume, giving the Shanghai Exchange an actual seat on the PMCC's board. The plan announced alongside the launch includes expanding Hong Kong's gold storage capacity roughly tenfold, from around 200 tons today toward more than 2,000 tons within 3 years, along with a new price reference rate called HAU, now being distributed through Bloomberg terminals to give traders a credible benchmark during Asian trading hours specifically. The PMCC's board includes 11 banks in total, 5 major Chinese institutions, plus 6 international names: HSBC, JPMorgan, UBS, Citi, Standard Chartered, and ANZ. It's a genuine mix of Chinese state-linked banking power and established Western institutional credibility, sitting on the same board, backing the same new system. Section 3. The detail that makes this hard to dismiss. Here's the part of this story I think deserves the most attention, because it's the detail that separates this from just another regional financial announcement. Of those 11 banks now backing Hong Kong's system, several are the exact same institutions that already sit on London's own gold clearing body, the London Precious Metals Clearing Limited, a group that, prior to this year, had only 5 members. HSBC, JPMorgan, UBS, and Citi all appear on both boards. And the timing is genuinely striking. Citi was formally accepted as a member of London's clearing group on July 6, 2026, one day before Hong Kong's new system began its own trial settlements. Sit with that for a second. The same banks that built and continue to profit from London's century-old dominance over gold pricing are simultaneously and quite publicly helping construct Hong Kong's infrastructure to potentially challenge it. That's not typically how institutions behave toward a project they consider a minor regional experiment. It's much more consistent with banks hedging their own position against a structural shift they think is genuinely plausible, even if nobody, including the banks themselves, knows exactly how far or how fast it goes. Section 4. Why now and what's actually driving this? This launch didn't happen in a vacuum, and understanding the why now is where this story connects to something much bigger than clearing infrastructure. Go back to 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States and its allies froze a substantial portion of Russia's foreign exchange reserves that had largely been held in Western financial systems and denominated in Western currencies. For decades, holding reserves that way was considered about as safe as anything in international finance. That episode forced central banks worldwide to confront an uncomfortable reality. Reserves held inside another country's financial system under that country's jurisdiction can be restricted or frozen if the political circumstances demand it. Physical gold, by contrast, held and cleared through infrastructure a country actually controls, doesn't carry that same vulnerability. That's part of why central banks globally have been net buyers of gold for well over a decade now, a trend that measurably accelerated after 2022. Hong Kong's new system, explicitly built to invite central banks and institutional investors from countries connected to China's broader economic partnerships, fits directly into that same pattern, offering an alternative settlement pathway that doesn't have to route through London or New York at all. This is also landing at a moment when gold itself has had an extraordinary year. The metal touched an all-time high above $5,500 an ounce back in January before a real correction, and has been climbing again recently, trading in the $4,300 to $4,400 range as of this week. A structural shift in how and where gold gets cleared is arriving at exactly the moment when more capital than usual, private and central bank alike, is actively flowing into the metal. Section 5. What this doesn't mean yet. I want to be genuinely careful here because a story like this attracts people who want to turn it into either full-blown panic or a guaranteed windfall, and I don't think either framing is honest. London remains today overwhelmingly the dominant center for global gold clearing and pricing. That doesn't change overnight because one new system completed its first trial settlements in July. Hong Kong's system is still explicitly in a trial phase. The storage build-out to 2,000 tons is a 3-year plan, not something that exists yet. And whether central banks and major institutions actually choose to route meaningful volume through Hong Kong instead of London is a genuinely open question that will likely take years to answer, not months. Nobody, not me, not any analyst, not the banks sitting on both boards, can tell you with certainty how far or how fast this shift ultimately goes. Financial infrastructure like this has a long history of running for years as a smaller regional complement to the dominant center, and only occasionally growing into something that genuinely redraws where pricing power sits. What I can tell you with confidence is that the infrastructure for a genuine alternative now exists and is operating with real institutional backing for the first time in over a century. That's a meaningfully different starting point than the world had a year ago, even if the outcome from here is still unwritten. Section 6. Why this isn't just a gold story. I want to touch on silver here too, briefly, because a similar dynamic is worth watching even though this particular infrastructure shift is specifically about gold. Silver hasn't been the direct subject of Hong Kong's new clearing system, but it moves through many of the same underlying channels, priced and settled through infrastructure that's historically been concentrated in the same Western centers as gold. If Asian institutions genuinely capture more structural influence over how gold gets priced and cleared over the coming years, silver, with its own separate industrial demand story layered on top and a considerably smaller overall market, is reasonably well positioned to be swept along by the same broader current, potentially with more percentage movement given how much smaller its market is. None of that is a prediction about price. It's simply an observation about how these infrastructure shifts, when they happen, tend not to stay contained to a single metal. So here's where that leaves us. A gold pricing and clearing system that's operated out of London, largely unchallenged since 1919, just watched a government-backed, Shanghai-linked alternative complete its first real settlements, built in part by the very same banks that run the London system today. That's not a rumor or a theory. It's a documented event with named banks, a named entity, and a specific date. The deeper driver behind it traces back to 2022 and a broader, multi-year pattern of central banks diversifying away from reserves that depend entirely on Western-controlled financial infrastructure. What it isn't, at least not yet, is a takeover, a collapse of London's role, or a signal about where the gold price goes next week. It's a genuine, early structural development, one worth understanding clearly rather than either dismissing or panicking over, especially with gold itself sitting near multi-month highs as this new infrastructure starts its first real trial runs. Do you think Hong Kong's system ends up as a genuine rival to London within the next few years, or a smaller regional complement to it? I'm genuinely curious how this reads to you. Drop your take in the comments. This isn't financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research before making any decisions based on any of this. If walking through the actual mechanism behind a story like this, instead of just the headline version, is useful to you, subscribe. I'll keep tracking the system as it moves from trial operations toward full deployment.